Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to Eyes of Faith with Michael Roy. Thanks for tuning into the channel today. God bless you. Well, of course, you know what we talk about here, the Eyes of Faith. We talk about it all. We talk about uh, politics. We talk about church. We talk about the economy, sports, sex, drugs, rock and roll is all on the table. If you have not subscribed to Eyes of Faith with Michael Roy, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. If you have not subscribed to Eyes of Faith with Michael Roy, hit that subscribe button. And for all of you who've already subscribed, thank you and God bless you. Well, this afternoon we want to talk about the economy, and of course, you know that after the pandemic, we had a rough time getting the economy restarted and getting people back to work. And of course, we know the fallacious vote that took place that moved Donald Trump out of office and moved in Joe Biden and others. Well, of course, Joe Biden stepped in, took over the economy, and the economy crashed even more. And they have yet been able to get this economy on track while they use the media and others to pretend that the economy is okay. They know it's flawed. So they established the Inflation Reduction Act, which put more and more money into the economy and which caused the economy to inflate even more. So prices have skyrocketed. They've gone through the roof. And so now what do they want to do? So now it's time for a new election. It's time to elect a new president. And of course, we know Kamala Harris wants to be the president. And one of her first things she wants to do, she says, is to establish price controls. Now, let me see. You took over. You and Joe Biden took over the presidency. You know, and supposedly you're going to run the government, but you never came up with a plan to get the economy really on track, to get people back to working, to get markets working right, to get jobs back online right. And yet you still continue to inject more money into the economy, which causes more inflation. Since that didn't work, it's time for Joe Biden to move. Now, Kamala wants to be the president, and her things, she says, is she wants to use Marxist, socialist price controls. Price controls don't work. They've never worked. And I'm going to let you hear from a couple of America's most noted economists. One, of course, has passed away. That would be Milton Friedman, professor at the University of Chicago for a while, but was a well-known economist worldwide, and also someone who's still with us today, um, Thomas Sowell, another well-known, very professional, very astute economist, and they both will speak to us today about price controls. Now, I'm going to play a snippet of each of their videos as they both speak about price controls. Then I'm going to give you my point of view on what I see and understand. So let me first uh, go and pull. I'll go with Milton Friedman first. So let's start here and let him speak for a moment.
By the false cures which government adopts, particularly wage and price controls. Wage and price controls, far from being a cure for inflation, only make inflation worse.
It is a device that governments have repeatedly resorted to try to cover up the effects of their own policies. It is offered as a cure for inflation. It is not a cure for inflation. It has never been a cure for inflation. It is an alleged cure that is far worse than the disease, because its effect is to repress the symptoms, to repress the consequences of the more basic force. I always say that if you want to analyze wage and price control, the simplest analogy that brings it home is to think of a kettle on your stove in which there's water, and the water is boiling. It's got a cover on it, and the boiling water is threatening to throw the cover off. Now, obvious, sensible thing to do is to turn down the heat under the kettle. Another thing you can do is to take a brick and put it on top of the kettle, and at the same time turn up the heat. That is precisely what President Nixon did in 1971 when he simultaneously put a brick on top of the kettle by freezing prices and wages, and at the same time launched on a more expansive monetary and fiscal policy, which turned up the heat under the kettle. And what happened? The lid of the kettle blew up. You held it down for a little while, and then you had a 12%, 13% inflation. That has been.
So, okay, so now we see from Milton Friedman that price controls are just a bad idea. Uh, in a free market economy, the law of supply and demand, the market sets prices. The more people buy, the cheaper products are. When there's competition, it sets the price. We don't need the government stepping in to inject their point of view on our economy. The people, when they like a product, they determine what the cost is going to be. When people are competing for a product, the price goes up. When the demand for a product is low, the price goes down. That's a free market economy. We don't need the government stepping in to change that. So let's go and listen to Thomas Sowell for just a moment. Here's Thomas Sowell, who is still with us.
Standard, really stereotypical pattern. One is that you reduce the supply of whatever is being controlled. Not surprising, since people do less when they're paid less. The other is that you reduce the quality of what's being controlled, because higher quality is costlier than lower quality. And when you force the prices down, people then reduce the quality of what they're producing. One of the classic examples is housing. Wherever rent control has been put in, there is a shortage of apartments. In many places, there's a provision in the law that says this is only a temporary measure until the housing shortage is over. And sometimes they define that in terms of some percentage of vacancy and so on. And what they don't understand is that as long as that law is on the books, there will always be a shortage, and there will never be a time to take the law off the books. In Paris, they put a law like this on the books as an emergency measure during World War I. It was still in force when World War II broke out. In Sweden, they put one in the early days of World War II. Decades later, it was still there. Finally, for some reason, it occurred to someone to take off the price controls. Instantly, there was a housing surplus. The housing projects put up by the Swedish government suddenly began to have high vacancy rates, and in fact had to be bailed out because they couldn't fill them. I thought about rent control a few years ago when I visited.
The very notion of making things affordable misses the key point of a market economy. An economy exists to make trade-offs, and a market economy makes the terms of those trade-offs plain with price tags representing the relative costs of producing different things. To have politicians arbitrarily change the price tags so that prices no longer represent the real costs is to defeat the whole purpose. Reality doesn't change when the government changes price tags. Price control hides costs rather than reducing them. Hidden costs continue to take their toll, and it is often a higher toll than when these costs are freely transmitted through the marketplace. Less supply, poorer quality, and longer waits have been the consequence of price controls for all sorts of goods and services in all sorts of societies and for thousands of years of human history. Whether in France during the 1790s, the Soviet Union after the Bolshevik Revolution, or in newly independent African nations during the past generation, governments have imposed artificially low prices on food. In each case, this led to artificially low supplies of food and artificially high levels of hunger.
Okay, now, so Just upon watching those two videos, these gentlemen have taught us that government does not need to intervene in a free market economy. The best thing the government can do is make sure that there's no corruption, that there is no fraudulent activity going on, and let the economy pull itself out of its ebbs and flows. In an economy, you have highs and lows, you have peaks and valleys, you're going to have recessions and depressions. Inflation will be for a time, but we usually come out of it. But usually because of pressure from private groups, uh, different entities that want to try to control other people and governments and neighborhoods and communities. You get these people who come in and put pressure on politicians to try to do something about what's happening with the economy. And so you have people like Kamala and others who say, hey, let's use price controls. But what price controls do is they interfere with the natural ebb and flow of an economy. And it causes a lot of trouble. Example, there are three things that happen with price controls. These are what we call hidden costs. Here are some of the hidden costs of price controls. They reduce the supply of whatever is being controlled. When you try to control the price of beans or control the price of the number of cars produced, you try to control the price of how many homes are built. When you try to control costs, you naturally automatically reduce the supply of that item. Number two, the quality. When you try to tell Porsche how much they can charge for a Porsche, then you're not going to get that fine work that Porsche does on those vehicles. You're just not going to get that quality. Third, whenever you put price controls on something, you're going to make people wait longer for those items. So there are artificial pressures put up on an economy when the government tries to intervene and interfere by using price controls and other means of trying to artificially establish a price. Free markets establish prices. If I want to sell this cup, I can sell this cup for $10. I can sell this cup for $3. What people want to pay for this cup determines how many I will sell. I may sell like Walmart. I may sell 50 million of these cups at $3, whereas at $10, I may only sell 50,000. The market determines that. We don't need the government interfering what the market should be doing. The government needs to get out of the way. As Ronald Reagan said, the most nine of the most feared words of the government is when someone says, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." We need the government to move out of the way. Bring the police, bring the military, make sure we're safe, we're secure, we don't have any terrorists or thieves or money launderers, all those coming in and taking stuff they shouldn't take, but make sure everything within the government realm is okay. And you let the businesses deal with one another to establish market value and cost of goods and services. That's how you run a free market, is allow supply and demand to help determine pricing of goods and services. See, what people want establishes the cost of things. We need government to get out of the business of trying to establish prices and let the free markets do that. Hey, this is Eyes of Faith with Michael Roy. I hope this has been insightful. I hope it can help you and vote based on what you know and understand about the economy, because unless we, the people, have a mind to know and understand what's going on, we will shoot ourselves in the foot and we'll pay a cost we didn't need to pay. This is Eyes of Faith with Michael Roy. Please like, subscribe, and share. Like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.